Once upon a time, in a tiny village nestled between rolling hills, there lived a poor widow and her only son, Jack. They lived in a small, run-down cottage. The roof leaked, the windows were broken, and the walls were cracked. Jack and his mother barely had enough food to survive, and the only thing they owned of any value was a cow named Milky White. The cow had been with them for years, giving them milk every day. But now she had grown old, and her milk had dried up. Without the milk to sell at the market, they had no way to buy food. One day, Jack's mother sighed deeply as she looked at the cow. "Jack," she said, her voice heavy with sorrow, "we have no other choice. We must sell Milky White. Take her to the market and see if you can get a good price. It's the only way we can survive." Jack felt a pang of sadness in his chest. Milky White had been his friend, and the thought of parting with her made him feel uneasy. But he knew his mother was right. They needed the money. Early the next morning, Jack tied a rope around the cow's neck and set off toward the market. As he walked, he stroked Milky White's head and whispered, "I'm sorry, old friend, but I promise I'll find you a good home." He hadn't gone far when he met a strange-looking old man standing by the side of the road. The man wore a long, tattered coat, and his eyes twinkled with mischief. "Good morning, young lad," the old man said, his voice raspy but friendly. "Where are you taking that fine cow?" "To the market," Jack replied. "She doesn't give milk anymore, and we need the money." The old man nodded thoughtfully. "I see," he said. "But what if I told you I had something even more valuable than money?" Jack frowned. He wasn't sure what the old man meant. "What could be more valuable than money?" Jack asked, curiosity creeping into his voice. The old man reached into his pocket and pulled out 5 small, shiny beans. He held them out in his wrinkled hand. "These are magic beans," he said, his eyes gleaming. "If you plant them, they will grow into a beanstalk so tall that it will reach the sky. And at the top of that beanstalk, you'll find riches beyond your wildest dreams." Jack stared at the beans, unsure what to think. Magic beans? Could it be true? He had heard stories of magic before, but he had never believed in it. Still, something about the old man seemed trustworthy, and Jack's curiosity got the better of him. "Are you sure?" Jack asked. "Very sure," the old man replied, smiling warmly. "You won't regret it." Jack hesitated for a moment, but then he thought about his mother and their desperate situation. Maybe these beans really were the answer to their problems. So after a moment's thought, Jack agreed to the trade. He handed over Milky White's rope and took the beans from the old man. "Thank you," Jack said. "I'll plant them right away." The old man waved him off with a smile and disappeared down the road. Jack hurried home, eager to show his mother the magic beans. When he arrived, his mother was waiting by the door, her face hopeful. "Did you sell the cow?" she asked. Jack smiled proudly and held out the beans. "I didn't get money, but I got something even better. Magic beans. If we plant them, they'll grow into a giant beanstalk that reaches the sky." Jack's excitement was clear in his voice, but his mother didn't share his enthusiasm. Instead, her face turned red with anger. "Magic beans!" she cried. "You traded our only cow for a handful of beans? What were you thinking, Jack? We can't eat beans. How are we supposed to survive now?" Before Jack could explain, his mother grabbed the beans from his hand and threw them out the window. "You foolish boy!" she scolded. "Now we have nothing." She sent Jack to bed without supper, her heart heavy with disappointment. Jack lay in bed feeling ashamed and confused. Had he made a terrible mistake? His stomach growled with hunger, and he wished he could take back the trade. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought about the strange old man and the magic beans. Maybe, just maybe, they really were magical. The next morning, Jack woke to the sound of birds chirping outside his window. He rubbed his eyes and stretched. As he sat up, he noticed something strange. Outside his window, where the beans had been thrown, there was a giant green stalk rising into the sky. It was so tall that Jack couldn't even see the top. His heart raced with excitement. "The beans!" he shouted. "They really are magic!" Without thinking, Jack rushed outside and began climbing the beanstalk. The stem was thick and sturdy, and it twisted and turned as it stretched into the clouds. Jack climbed higher and higher, his heart pounding with excitement and a little bit of fear. The wind whipped through his hair, and he could feel the cool mist of the clouds on his face. After what seemed like hours, Jack finally reached the top. He stepped onto a thick cloud and found himself in a strange, enchanted land. The sky above was a deep blue, and the ground beneath his feet felt soft and spongy. In the distance, Jack saw a massive castle with towering walls and giant windows. His eyes widened in amazement. "I wonder who lives there," Jack thought to himself. His curiosity got the best of him, and he started walking toward the castle. As he approached, Jack noticed how enormous everything was. The doors were so tall he would need to stand on his toes just to knock. He could hear loud footsteps echoing inside the castle, but his excitement pushed him forward. When Jack reached the door, he knocked as loudly as he could. After a moment, the door creaked open, and Jack was greeted by a giant woman. She looked down at Jack with a puzzled expression. "What are you doing here, little boy?" the giant woman asked, her voice booming like thunder. "I'm Jack," he replied, trying to sound brave. "I climbed the beanstalk and came to see what's up here." The giant woman raised an eyebrow but smiled kindly. "You'd better come inside before my husband gets home. He's a giant, and he's not as friendly as I am. If he finds you, he might eat you for dinner." Jack's heart skipped a beat, but he followed the giant woman into the castle. The kitchen was enormous, with huge tables, chairs, and pots hanging from the ceiling. The giantess gave Jack a piece of bread and some milk. As Jack sat by the fire, warming himself, he heard loud footsteps approaching the castle. The ground shook as the giant entered. "Fee, fee, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman!" the giant roared. The giantess quickly hid Jack inside a large cupboard. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "If he finds you, he'll eat you." Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he peeked through a crack in the cupboard door. The giant was huge, with a thick beard and fierce eyes. He sniffed the air suspiciously. "I smell a human," he growled. His wife waved her hand dismissively. "You're imagining things," she said. "Sit down and eat your meal." The giant grumbled but sat down at the table. After finishing his meal, he pulled out a large bag of gold coins and began counting them. Jack's eyes widened as he watched. The gold coins shimmered in the firelight. The giant soon grew tired, and after counting the coins, he fell asleep in his chair, snoring loudly. Jack saw his chance. He crept out of the cupboard, grabbed the bag of gold, and ran as fast as he could out of the castle. His heart raced as he hurried back to the beanstalk. Climbing down was even harder than going up, but Jack didn't stop. When he finally reached the ground, he showed his mother the bag of gold. "Look, Mother, we're rich!" Jack cried, his face glowing with excitement. His mother was astonished. She hugged Jack tightly and said, "Oh, Jack, this will save us. We can buy food and live comfortably now." For a while, Jack and his mother lived happily with the gold. But Jack's curiosity was not satisfied. He kept thinking about the giant's castle and what other treasures might be there. So a few weeks later, Jack decided to climb the beanstalk again. This time, when Jack reached the top, he crept quietly to the castle, hoping to avoid the giant. The giantess saw him again and said, "You're back? You're lucky my husband didn't catch you last time. Be careful." Once again, the giant came home roaring, "Fee, fee, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman." But Jack hid, while the giant ate his meal. Afterward, the giant took out a golden hen and commanded, "Lay!" To Jack's amazement, the hen laid a golden egg. The giant laughed, pleased with his treasure and soon fell asleep. Jack saw his opportunity. He crept out from his hiding place, grabbed the hen, and ran as fast as he could. The hen squawked, but Jack held on tight and hurried down the beanstalk. His mother was amazed when Jack showed her the golden hen. "This hen lays a golden egg every day," Jack explained. "We'll never be poor again." And it was true. The hen provided them with endless wealth. But even with all their riches, Jack couldn't stop thinking about the castle and the magic that lay within it. So, a few days later, Jack climbed the beanstalk one final time. This time, the giantess was suspicious. "You've been lucky twice, but I don't know if you'll be lucky again," she warned. However, Jack begged for food, and the kind giantess let him in. Once again, the giant returned home, roaring, "Fee-fi-fo-fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman." But Jack hid, and the giant sat down to eat. Afterward, the giant took out a magical harp that could play beautiful music on its own. Jack watched in awe as the harp played the most enchanting tunes, and soon the giant fell asleep to its music. Jack's hands trembled with excitement as he quietly sneaked over to the harp. He grabbed it and started to run, but the harp called out, "Master! Master!" The giant woke up with a start and saw Jack running with the harp. "Thief!" the giant roared. He leapt up and chased after Jack, his footsteps shaking the ground. Jack ran as fast as he could, his heart pounding in his chest. The giant was close behind him, but Jack was determined to escape. He reached the beanstalk and scrambled down, his hands slipping on the vines. The giant was just behind him, but Jack was quicker. When Jack reached the bottom, he shouted to his mother, "Quick, bring the axe!" His mother rushed over with an axe, and Jack began chopping down the beanstalk. The giant was still climbing down, but just as he reached the ground, the beanstalk snapped, and the giant tumbled down with a thunderous crash. The giant hit the ground with such force that the earth shook, and he died instantly. Jack and his mother were finally safe. With the giant gone, and the magical harp, hen, and gold, they lived happily ever after, never worrying about hunger or poverty again. Jack learned a valuable lesson about bravery, but also about the importance of thinking carefully before taking risks.